Okay, I'm going to tell you about caricature materials. Right now, there is no marker that every caricature artist uses. There are a lot of markers out there. All of them have some kind of little flaw. Marker needs to be able to make a thin line and a thick line all in one line. Now, this Crayola isn't bad. It makes a pretty good line, but the ink is weak. It's got weak ink. Look, if you put one line over another line, you can see it gets darker where they meet. You don't want that. You want solid black wherever it touches. So I'm going to round up some different tools from around the studio here. This is a Utrecht design marker. This is a Tombow brush pen. It's pretty old. It's almost wrecked. Here's some kind of Bic permanent marker. An ordinary ballpoint pen. And this is cool. It's some kind of Japanese pilot dual-sided brush pen. And that's Obama. He volunteered to be our subject today. I'm going to start with this Crayola. It's a good tool. It's not a great tool. Like I said, because of the quality of the ink. But the tip is good. You can see that it does a really thick, dark eyebrow, and it does these very thin lines where I want to do an eyelid and the lines under his eyes. Now I'm going to switch to this Bic permanent marker. Again, it's not a terrible marker, but it's not great. It's definitely not perfect because it can't go thick to thin the way the Crayola does. The thin line made by the Bic isn't that thin, and the thick line isn't that thick. Look at this eyebrow. I'm trying to fill in this eyebrow, and I'm pushing pretty hard, but I still can't make the eyebrow in one stroke, like I did with his left eyebrow with the Crayola, because this pen is just not flexible enough for that. On the other hand, I think you can even see from this image that the eyebrow and the eye on the left side are just a little bit lighter than the eyebrow and the eye on the right, because the Bic permanent marker is just a lot darker. It has a much higher quality of ink in it than the Crayola. Now I'll switch again to the Utrecht design marker. This is actually a brush pen. It has a brush tip instead of a normal chisel. And it shares a problem with all brush tips. While it does do the best thick to thin line you could ever hope for, you can never make the same line twice. It's very hard to control. And because of that, I have to go really slow with it. Sorry, Mr. Obama. They're not small. Now here's a pen with the opposite problem to that. This is just an ordinary ballpoint pen. So it's going to give me one line. It's going to be the same every time. The problem is when you're drawing this size, that line is going to be tiny. So I can find a use for it here in the hairline where I don't want giant thick lines. Any little detail work, it's going to be good for that. But obviously I can't draw the whole caricature with it because it just won't be big enough. This particular brush pen is my favorite. It's cool. It's a very nice brush. I can't use it for caricatures, particularly not this size because it's too small. Look at that line. It's just not quite big enough to actually draw the whole thing with. And of course it does share a problem with other brush pens in that it's not easy to control. It's easier than a big brush, like the Tombow or the Utrecht, but still not as easy to control as a marker like the Crayola. Obama doesn't care about any of this stuff. This is our last tool. This is the Tombow brush pen. It's old. It's been used and abused. Look at this. You might be able to make one really slow line with it, but I don't want to do that. I want to go fast. And these fast lines are worthless. Look, they're all grainy and fuzzy. You can't make a caricature with that. But look what you can do. This is called dry brushing. There's no other way to get this really cool texture. No other tool will make it. And it's the only way to use any marker to make gray. It's completely unique. Here's the thing. We're all a bunch of tools. But we're God's tools. We have one purpose. To love Him, then love each other. Look at this, Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And then Matthew 22:36 through 40. They're asking him, what's the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's the first and greatest commandment. And then the second, love your neighbor like yourself. So we have one job to do, to love God and to love each other. But you'll probably agree that we're not actually that good at that. We're a bunch of tools that don't work that well. I think I'm this guy. I think I'm inconsistent, hard to control. And some of you guys might be this, just unable to stretch far enough. Some of you might be too small for this job, and some of you are just really, really broken, really used up. I'm here to tell you that that doesn't matter. You go where God leads. You leave the line He wants you to leave. It doesn't matter that you're not a great tool. It matters that He knows what you're for. A master will use the tools available to make something great. And in the hands of a master, even a broken tool has a purpose. Cool, huh?